Funko, open the door, now!
How did we get in this situation? Chances are, over the years, you've seen these things in nearly every store you go into. FNAF merch is everywhere, and especially in 2016, the one company that was most known for making said merch was Funko. If you saw a Freddy plush, it was from Funko. If you saw a Bonnie plush, it was from Funko. If you saw whatever this monstrosity was, then you were absolutely certain it was from Funko. I mean, who wouldn't want to have some merch of such iconic characters like Blacklight Bonnie, Circus Foxy, and Liberty Chica? But back in 2024, Funko ended up having their FNAF master license removed, with it instead being given to Jazwares. Within a day, Funko had destroyed one of their most powerful assets, all thanks to one angry game developer. Now, while Funko still makes the occasional merch, it's nowhere near the capacity that it used to be. So what happened? How did this company that once dominated the FNAF merch space fall so far to the point of losing the one license they worked so hard to keep? Well, let's find out by looking at the company that lost the FNAF license. Going all the way back to 2015, before the flood of Funko's high-quality merch, Sanshi was the original FNAF license holder, but due to some copyright issues, Scott had to look for another merch company that could produce Five Nights at Freddy's products. And it wouldn't take him long to find Funko, a company known for making all kinds of merch for tons of different franchises. But just before he signed the license over to Funko, he wanted to try one other company first. Oh god, somebody rewind, please! Eventually, Funko had the FNAF Master License, which allowed them to do any kind of merch they wanted with approval first. This act begun the takeover of Funko in the FNAF merch scene, with them launching their first plush series in March of 2016. And things didn't exactly go to plan, as some fans began accusing Funko of stealing or copying Sanshi's FNAF plush designs, which were made just a year prior. And this had happened before Funko's plushes had even released. But Funko did what every good company does in the face of problems. They completely ignored the backlash that was received for supposedly copying Sanshi and waited for it all to blow over. Now, Funko continued to produce more merchandise, expanding to different products like action figures and these things that you see in every store that are always filling up people's shelves. They were in their prime, and they made sure they were going to use the FNAF license till it had nothing else to offer. But just as Funko was finally starting to get their hands into the franchise, they made some interesting decisions, and things would begin to slowly start falling apart. You see, in 2015, FNAF would begin to change, with the last major release being Sister Location before Scott took a 2-year break to make FNAF Pizzeria Simulator. Now, to the normal person, this is understandable, especially after Scott had made 6 of these games in just over a year. But to Funko, this meant they would have to get creative with the kind of merch they would need to make. Now, lucky for them, they still had some choices, with them not having released any plushes for both the Wizards and the Phantoms. But they had a different idea in mind, and I can imagine the board meeting went a little bit like this. Well, like, maybe we could take the original waves and, I don't know, make them like Blacklight or something? Now you might be thinking, well Loaf, surely Funko didn't just resell the old merch but throw a new paint job on them, right? So, Funko resold the old merch, but they only changed the paint so it would work under a blacklight. Yeah, Funko had begun to run out of ideas due to Pizzeria Simulator only releasing at the end of 2017, which means they didn't really have the time to make the new characters that were just shown, and they had to get unique. The decision to make the blacklight figures over more popular characters would rightfully confuse many fans, as they wondered why Funko wouldn't just make merch for pre-existing characters. Although as time went on, things got stranger for Funko's merch. Oh, hey there. Nah, don't worry about all that. Although now that you mention it, something you should think about is that my channel has hit 6,000 subscribers, so if you want to help me hit 10k, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any new uploads either. Also, like the video while you're here too. This door is about to break. At the start of 2018, Funko would continue their trend of trying to release as much FNAF merch as possible. And lucky for them, they had a lot of material to work with this year, considering both the Twisted Ones novel and FNAF Pizzeria Simulator were released, which allowed them to create some pretty interesting merch. To start the year, they launched their FNAF Pizzeria Simulator wave, which had some pretty decent products to start out with. Now, as much as I'm not a fan of the Funko Pops, these things don't look the worst. They got certain quality qualities that I think make them pretty decent to look at, but oh boy, do things only get worse from here. Around the same time as the FNAF Pizza Sim wave started, so did the Twisted Ones merch, and while the Funko Pops and Mystery Minis look semi-okay, the plushies that were released just a handful of months later look, oh god. Yeah, these things are awful and are probably the worst looking plushes that Funko has ever released up to this point. But after those creatures were released, the Twisted Ones wave pretty much ended right after that, which means we finally end up going back to the Pizza Sim wave. Let's see what's changed over here. Oh no. The Pizzeria Simulator action figures looked a little odd. Not exactly too bad, but certainly strange enough to raise an eyebrow when looking at them. But we're not going to be diving too deep into designs here, because we need to keep moving with our timeline. Fast forwarding to 2019, absolutely nothing had changed with Funko's business plan, which was to keep mass producing as many Five Nights at Freddy's products as they possibly could. This included probably the most disliked set from the FNAF Pizzeria Sim wave of merch, the glow-in-the-dark set. This wave included the mystery minis and the action figures, and overall was just a terrible attempt to resell old merch. The colours on all the products looked drained and just cheap overall. And I think what didn't help was the fact that we were just 4 years into Funko having the FNAF license, and shelves were being overrun with merch. And some people were beginning to get sick of the same low-quality items being resold at a higher price or just slightly modified enough for a re-release. Although, as we move on to the 2020s, these were the years where Funko's hold on the FNAF license would slowly begin to slip away, along with them making some of their most disliked products ever around this time. Let's move on to... The 2020s were bad years for everyone, but one company tried to make the most out of it. You already know where I'm going with this, it's Funko. But before we start in 2020 itself, let's go back 2 months to FNAF. Please empty your bank account here. That's right, FNAF AR had just launched before 2020 with tons of skins for already existing characters, which meant that Funko was ready to turn every last one of them into a piece of merch. And it didn't take long for that to start happening. In what is considered Funko's worst years, they would begin constantly producing products based on different skins from FNAF AR for the next 2 years, which only stopped when FNAF AR stopped receiving updates halfway through 2023. But let's talk about some of the worst merch that came out from Funko around this time, which I believe began to sour relations between Scott and Funko. But just before we get to that, I have one more thing to cover. You see, just as 2021 was starting, FNAF Security Breach hadn't received its official trailer yet, and no one had actually seen the new character designs. And due to Funko being the main FNAF merch company at the time, it was obvious they would have a wave ready to come out once the game was released. This is where Funko's lack of thinking showed the most, as they decided to reveal all the new merch, including the character designs, without Scott's permission. The post got taken down about an hour later, but at that point the damage was done. Oh, and if you were wondering what was happening at the beginning of the video, well, now you have your answer. Scott was reasonably angry, and I think at this point Funko knew that as soon as the contract was over, they would not be getting the master license back. So I like to describe what happened next as Funko going into panic mode. Everything that came out of Funko for the next 2 years was received horribly, and the merch itself was either just making up new characters entirely or reselling the old ones with a new cheap paint job. Every set that was released was scrutinized heavily, and if they weren't sure about getting the license back then, they could guarantee that they had lost it now. From the circus wave to the tie-dye set, everything felt like they were just trying to maximize profits before they weren't able to sell the items anymore. I mean, if you just look at the sets and waves that they released around this time, you will see how poor it is. What makes it even worse is that nearly all of the action figures just kept reusing the same molds for characters, which ended up making some look strange due to head shapes or body shapes not matching. It didn't take long after all this for Funko to realise that they had ran their course. Around July of 2024, Funko lost the FNAF master license, with it being given to Jazwares. Now, Funko continued to release odd pieces of merch here and there for FNAF, like Funko Pops, but they were no longer allowed to sell their old action figures or mystery minis. To be honest, it is sad to see how far they fell when they once had an iron grip on the FNAF merch industry. But now that Jazwares has the license, I hope in the future we finally start to see some high quality merch come out for this franchise. Well, that's the story of the company that lost the FNAF license. Before you go, this is the second out of the 4 videos that we will be releasing this month. So, if you don't want to miss the rest of the videos coming out, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Well, I'll keep this outro short. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in next week's upload. Bye everyone.